Okay, welcome everybody. This is our final fireside chat of the year, and I'm happy to introduce Daniel Carcillo, a former NHL hockey player, who's going to be speaking with us tonight. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Before I get into my introduction of Daniel, I'm just going to take us through a couple moments of some mindfulness to help us ground and just kind of settle in for the evening. So. Oh, I'm going to close my eyes. I invite you all to do the same if you wish, and at the very least, to turn your attention inside for a minute or so, bringing your awareness to your breath and to your body. Letting go of the stress of the day. With each exhale, just feeling the stress and tension of the day leaving your body. And orienting toward this next hour and a half that we get to spend in community. And taking a moment to feel your feet on the floor. Letting yourself ground, letting your nervous system settle. And in your own time, you can return here to the call. Oh, okay. Thanks for indulging me in that. And yeah, welcome again, everybody. And yeah, I've got a little introduction for Daniel. Daniel Carcillo is a former NHL player known for his fearless grit on the ice, resulting in many traumatic brain injuries. After retiring from professional hockey, Dan embarked on a personal journey catalyzed by our own Dr. Dan Engel to heal from the TBIs that he sustained during his career. This experience ignited a great passion in him to heal suffering from his own traumatic brain injuries and the other mental health issues that followed. Since then, Dan has become a leading advocate for mental health and psychedelic therapy. His work with Wasana Health has shown a spotlight on the potential for alternative treatments to heal traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, and other mental health challenges. Through advocacy, research, and personal testimony, Dan has become a beacon of hope for athletes, veterans, and anyone navigating the invisible wounds of trauma. Today, he joins us to share his story, not just the journey of his healing, but about the larger mission to ensure access to these transformative therapies for all who needs them. We'll hear about his personal path, his advocacy work, and his hopes for the future of mental health treatment. Please join me in welcoming a true changemaker and a fierce advocate for healing, Mr. Daniel Carcillo. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Meredith, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Um, Almost fell asleep there. Had four kids the whole week. My wife was traveling, but um, yeah, good to be here. I'm just gonna start a timer just to make sure I don't go over. But maybe I start with just a little bit about me and where I grew up and my hockey career, and then what's kind of led me to this wonderful organization and the suffering that's occurred to give me a new lease and a new chance at life and a new purpose. So I grew up in Canada, Toronto, Canada, small farming town called King City, and everybody's pretty much born with skates on in the country. It's pretty much religion, and It's where like a lot of community, everybody kind of gets around the rink, and that was no different. I was just really drawn to the sport. Always asked a lot of weird questions that I didn't vocalize too much about, what am I doing here? And what is this all about? And so to be able um to say I was maybe a little bit uncomfortable in my own skin was accurate, but then to get to the rink, I can leave all those things behind and just play a game by a different set of rules. And that was really unique to me. So anytime I was at the rink, I took it very seriously. I have two brothers in the middle. I just was really drawn to it. And I grew up you know in a kind of middle class family, hardworking Italians. And Around 14 or 15 years old, I realized that there could be an opportunity for me to use this sport if I really applied myself in the next 3 or 4 years to get out of the town that I was in and to maybe make a name for it for myself. Um and so when I applied myself, I ended up getting drafted at 15 to a league called the Ontario Hockey League. It's where 16-year-olds to 21-year-olds play against each other. So I left home at 16 and played a year in Sarnia, Ontario, and ended up getting drafted to the NHL at 17, turning 18. Still in high school, so very young, and ended up turning pro as soon as I was done with high school. So 19, turning 20. I enjoyed a 10-year NHL career where my nickname was Car Bomb, and part of my job is to be an enforcer. I fast forwarded to kind of that part because I don't think a lot of people know, but hockey is has a very strange culture that's associated with cult-like behavior and hazing. And so when I was 16, with that first year, there was a group of 12 of us who were rookies who had to endure. Um, there's a level of hazing that everybody has to endure, but this group of veterans took it to a kind of another level. So what should have been the best year of my life, getting drafted to the NHL, was really difficult. And that harbored a lot of anger, frustration, which really changed the way that I kind of approached the game. From a young age, you're taught to impose your will on other people, right? We're competing, and we need to beat somebody else. But this was when I got to the pros, it was different. I actually started to fight. And I definitely didn't have this kind of realization while I was in my career, but that trauma that we endured fueled me, and I, I'll touch on this more later, but I'm in a position now where, I'm very proud of who I am and the recovery that I've made, both from traumatic brain injury and some of these other things that happened. And without that trauma, I don't know if I would have, enjoyed such a long career. It's a very strange thing to be, at peace with everything that has happened, because it's led me to this point, and I'm in a really good place, with my family and with the things that I'm doing and advocating for. So after I was drafted at 20 years old, I, for the first 5 years, meddled around, got traded 3 times. As I sit here today, I've, two horizontal tears in both ankles. I've lost 4 teeth. I've broken my nose 3 times. I've had 7 diagnosed concussions. I have arthritis in both knees, both hips. I've had a orthoscopic hip surgery. I've had my abdomen stapled back to my pelvis. I have no left labrum in my shoulder. I've got 164 fights under my belt, and a lot of injuries. But A lot of those injuries came in the first 5 years. So from 20 to 25, as I was being traded, I was just not very kind to myself or to other people. And it was in the context of a game, and everything was legal. Some things weren't, and I got suspended and fined for it. But the unpredictability is something that helped me keep my job, quite frankly, for a very long time. So as an enforcer, one of your jobs is to make the skilled players who score the goals and make all the money. Make them feel safe. Make sure that they are able to focus on the game, and the other team may be a little bit distracted by your actions. And so I played that role to perfection. Was a really good teammate, or at least what I thought was a good teammate, but didn't really have too much success like with teams or in the playoffs those first 5 years. I had some run-ins with addiction. So I was, drinking heavily. And then when I was prescribed a lot of opiates after a couple of surgeries, I had to get really honest with myself at 25 years old and ask myself, how much longer can I do this? I was on my third team, and it felt like I was kind of getting close to getting pushed out of the league if I didn't, clean up my behavior off the ice. And so, luckily, I had a DUI that happened when I was 21, and that introduced me to something that was called the NHL Substance Abuse Program. And so, in this program, you're monitored, really well to make sure that you're healthy and you're healthy enough mentally, physically, emotionally to play this game. And as soon as I had these two surgeries back to back within 10 days at 25, I was introduced to opiates. And then in 4 months, I was full blown addicted. And so I knew I needed help. I wasn't on a contract for the next season. So I ended up asking the doctors from the program if I could go somewhere in Malibu, if I can go get treatment. And it was the best thing that ever happened, because I just think I was kind of ready at that age, to kind of look around, zoom out, realize that if things didn't change, I was likely going to end up in more institutions, dead, or I could try to get better. And so I ended up going to the canyon in Malibu. I detoxed myself before I went there, and it was you know, it's really where I think my life started to turn around. I started to learn about meditation, breath work, like journaling, how to identify things that I didn't necessarily like in my past about my family structure, and the hazing and things that made me me, but maybe I wanted to change. Got to reconcile with my family on a family weekend with my two brothers and everybody in the room, and got introduced to diet, nutrition, different types of diet, organic food, um, Indian sweat lodges, these different types of techniques instead of using alcohol and all the things that were prescribed to us to come down after games. So I left there kind of reinvigorated, stayed sober for 3 years. And in the next 5 seasons, I went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times with 3 different teams, and I, had some of my best years. I didn't really get injured, and just a lot of really good things were happening for me. So I always describe it as, if um, you're treating yourself right and other people right, then your luck is a sure thing, and it certainly seemed that way for the last 5 years. Um, I did receive my sixth and seventh diagnosed concussion. My seventh diagnosed concussion was my last year in the league, 2014 and 15. Symptoms from that became pretty unbearable. Balance issues, light sensitivity, slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, depression and anxiety were starting to set in. Um, and I just really wanted to make a decision for myself. I was kind of spent. I had a really good friend, Steve Monitor, who'd passed away at the age of 19, or excuse me, at the age of 30, who had 19 concussions. I watched him go through 4 of them in a 12-week period when I was on the Blackhawks. And I was like, this looks like me. I'm starting to experience some of these symptoms. They found that he had CTE in his brain, stage 2 or 3, which is a neurodegenerative disease. I had doctors telling me that, I was probably on that path. And so I made a decision and stepped away from the game at the age of 30, pretty early. But 10 years is a long time in pro sports. And then I got introduced to the medical system. Luckily, I had all the best means in the world. Started down the road of synthetics to try to manage symptoms. Some other holistic tools, float tanks, hyperbaric chamber, moxa acupuncture, and I really started reading. Going to stroke rehabilitation centers as well, learning about the brain, 6 different parts. Concussion isn't on the whole part. I was going through a lot of like really intensive diagnostics, where they measure like eye health and brain health. And then they identify what parts of the brain, there's usually only 1 or 2 that are most affected by your trauma. And then how to initiate like exercises to stimulate these areas of the brain, which all sounds great. But it wasn't covered by insurance, and it's cash pay. And there was only a certain amount of time that I could do that for before I didn't have the means. And then I read the 2014 study in 2017 by Robin Carr Harris, with the 2 circles, and placebo brain, non-placebo brain on psilocybin. And a light went off, and I thought, wow, I think this could work for me. But it wasn't until 2019 that I kind of got over the stigma, and I was ready to try it. Luckily, that was right when Colorado decriminalized it. So I went there to a farm and took this invitation from a teammate. Not much preparation or anything like that, which I obviously don't recommend. But luckily, I'd had about 12 years of talk therapy, and at that point would describe myself as a self-actualizing person that I think could pretty much handle anything. And I took 5.6 grams. This was about 4 years after I started this journey. And I was very suicidal at this point. I thought I'd lost hope. I'd tried so many different treatments. Almost didn't get on the plane, but ended up making it there and had a very challenging experience. It was a difficult one, especially with mushrooms. That medicine tends to be a truth serum and exasperate what's at the forefront of your mind, but it's exactly kind of what I needed, to see that I was living in a little bit of a victimhood mindset, blaming all of the other exterior things, and not really taking too much ownership, in kind of my journey and where I needed to go, what I needed to do. And it really did shift my perspective in a very big way. Um, and The last 2 hours of the ceremony were great. I was luckily guided with a few really solid people, and woke up the next day, and I like to describe it as feeling the way I should. A little glimmer of hope at around 16 years old, before I started taking those really big hits. Took diagnostics before I left and after, and then 6 months later, I had no brain abnormalities. Doctors couldn't find it, and then my blood work was completely clear. So I thought, all right, there's not much hope in the concussion community, and I should probably start talking about this. So that's what I started to do right around 2020. Um, we're getting to 15 minutes, and maybe with the second part of my talk, I can tell everybody kind of how I turned that diagnosis and reversing those signs and symptoms into the next 5 years or so of entrepreneurship, advocacy work, and what we're doing now. And I will say before I stop is that Dr. Dan who's a co-founder with Kevin, was a really big part of that first week of my healing. And I really credit both of those ceremonies to really saving my life. So I'll stop there.
Mm, mm. Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Um,
So, what we're going to do at the moment is break out into some breakout rooms, and I'm going to send this message into the chat. And the question is, psychedelic therapies are emerging as a promising mental health treatment, um, and as a way to heal traumatic brain injuries. What excites or concerns you most about integrating these therapies into mainstream healthcare? And Ronnie, are you doing the breakout rooms? Awesome. So yeah, we'll go into some breakout rooms for about 10 minutes or so, and we can, yeah, share in there, and then we can all come back together.
hmm. All right. Kevin, you want me to just hop back in?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. All you.
Um, all right. So I know the maybe the first 15 minutes is like a lot to handle. But I it's a cool thing to be in a place in your life to know, to first of all be proud of where you've come from, and be proud of who you are. And also not let like the shame and the guilt of the past way too much on you. I know that there's a lot of concussion survivors maybe in here, and just survivors. Maybe you're not in the place that you want to be in currently. And maybe you're in a great place, but you're still uh maybe shaming or guilting yourself for some time that you've lost. I was talking with Joanna in the breakout room, and I'm very we need to be very careful with, I lost a lot of time with my kids, right? Because in like these very like great ages where I wish I could get it back. But there's a big part of me that fully knows and understands that, this path is the path. And the things that have happened to me and the time that I may have lost, there's no sense in shaming or guilting in moving forward, and I always just tell myself, even when I don't believe it, because there's some days I really don't believe it, that I'm in the right place at the right time, and I just have to continue to go, continue to move forward. And so from that breath, um it was 2020, it was 2019. I got this 6 month kind of brain scan back, clear blood work. I didn't necessarily need the scan, but I wanted it because there's a lot of stigma associated with a lot of these medicines, ketamine included. It's a Schedule 3. um Psilocybin, magic mushrooms being a Schedule 1, at least in the United States. And so I didn't just want to be a story on a microphone. I wanted like hard proof. And so, when I bring these brain scans and blood work, and I continue to do them every 6 years, it's impactful. And so I started to reach out to organizations that I can get involved in, or that, I could use my platform for, to try to advocate for this medicine. I kind of waited till about the year mark, because I had been through some treatments that worked and then they fell off. So I was a little skeptical even of my own recovery, to be quite honest. But at a year mark, I was doing even better than at the 6 month mark. The scans and blood work in my life was showing it. So I started to get in touch with a thing called Decriminalize Nature, which advocates for cities across the United States and states, to decriminalize this medicine. Because I do think, if you have any type of head on your shoulders, to have a government tell you that something in nature is illegal for you to take is kind of ridiculous. I think we're all responsible adults. Um, and so like with cannabis, and then they do that with mushrooms, it just didn't make any sense. And I think that people should have access to their own consciousness. And a lot of this therapy that we're going to be talking about, which is essentially why Thank You Life and organizations exist like this to provide grants, is because it's really expensive, and the reason it's expensive is because it's prohibitive, because this government has deemed it illegal. And so that makes it really difficult for clinics and um, centers to get lending, and that's why you don't see a lot of them open. And the ones that are open come with very high tickets for insurance because you're dealing with something that is scheduled. And so all of this just kind of drives up the cost of this medicine, no matter how good it is. These are just realities that business owners and entrepreneurs have to deal with. Um, so one of the buckets, and I believe in three buckets, I'm Switzerland. Um, and I guess I'll state them. I believe in decriminalized nature. I believe you should have access to your own consciousness in nature. Um, I believe, that you can give these things away and barter, just, don't charge for them. And you won't be in trouble with the IRS, etc. I believe in a medical system. I really do, albeit inferior to natural medicine, which is full spectrum, which is mushrooms, which falls into the category of decrim nature, and these statewide regulated programs. The middle way, some people, maybe like my parents, are going to want a diagnosis from a doctor, and they're going to want to do a synthetic medicine inside of a clinic with insurance pay, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. So let them have that, right? And so I advocate for that. I created an FDA drug development program with Wisana. I patented my method of use, which is basically like the protocol that I used. I didn't try to patent, the mushroom or anything like that. Which is partly why it failed, because you need intellectual property and investors won't give you money unless you have it. So I went down this whole kind of capital markets realm, which is a very kind of dark world. Um, we got, to a pre-IND meeting, and it was semi-successful. I was proud of the work that we did, and I learned a lot. Mainly how to operate clinics, because we owned and operated 3 psychiatrist clinics along with the FDA program. But then I really learned like about how our medicine gets made, which I won't touch on too much here, but it's a pretty crazy process. From animal studies to then just providing so much data, when there's so much safety data that kind of already exists with this medicine, but they want you to redo it, because the reality of our medicine being made through the FDA is it has to be synthetic. So it has to be made within a 0.1% variance for millions of people. So that's why you don't see natural medicine, prescribed to us, right? So, but I do believe in that system. We owned and operated ketamine clinics. I should say psychiatrist-led clinics that were inclusive of ketamine as a tool. And the clinic that we had acquired, it already had 4,000 treatments, and we mined that data. We were seeing things like 50% remission in PTSD diagnosis after 6 weeks of treatment. We were seeing over 60% in eating disorders, which was like very surprising. And anxiety, depression, around anywhere between 40 and 50% remission. People were achieving remission with these 6-week infusion programs. They are, expensive. And I think that's why, we're all here. But I mean, there's really good options out there when it relates to ketamine, especially if people have been down the road of trying 3 or 4 different medications. We were dealing with, in these clinics were in Illinois, a lot of treatment resistant depression. So we were treating, the sickest of the sickest, and saw some great results. So I do believe in the medical system. I do believe in a diagnosis, and then prescription medicine, and then insurance. And then the third bucket that I believe in is these regulated statewide frameworks that have been opened up in Oregon, that are opening up in Colorado, that are using, full spectrum mushrooms. And when I say regulated, it's almost as if they've created something similar to the FDA process. it doesn't cost hundreds of millions to get it through, but it costs millions. These programs that we just saw, for example, in Massachusetts, that failed. You have to raise millions of dollars to try to advocate to get these things on the ballot and get them through. But you have this regulated system where I have a service center. And so the environment for which you do this medicine is really important. So when you go to these ketamine clinics, you're not going to find a regular old kind of dentist looking office. You're going to find plants and softer colors, and in these rooms, sometimes with KAP, you'll have somebody else in the room if you deem necessary. You'll have music playing. So the environment for which you do this medicine in is really important. The intention is really important. But also, the medicine that you actually take is important, right? So we have these regulated environments or service centers that get licensed in these programs. We have licensed manufacturers. So you have specific ways to grow mushrooms using specific ingredients. And then those mushrooms end up getting tested by a testing facility. So that's the third license to ensure purity and no additives. And then you have licensed facilitators. So almost same as therapists in the FDA realm who know how to sit with people. And, this work is, it's work for sure. But it is some of the best work that I've ever come across to watch, to sit back and watch myself be reborn, continually reborn to get better. Because I still use this medicine, even though I don't come to it as a sick person. And to watch other people, adults, ask for help and then take a medicine that completely shifts their perspective and gives them new eyes of the world, essentially being reborn is like, it's the best thing I've ever seen or the best thing I've ever been a part of. There's risks obviously associated with any of this. Anything this powerful, comes with comes with risks. But we like to think that they're pretty well mitigated by, responsible intake processes and responsible ways. And you're hoping that people aren't taking advantage just to keep their doors open. I'm speaking more so in the context of these kind of new statewide regulated programs. But, so in Oregon, there's been over 8,000 people treated and it's gone pretty well. I'm hoping that'll be the same in Colorado. And so those are the three things that I believe in. And I advocate for. There's I will say there's over 2,100 ketamine clinics open now, using, FDA approved intranasal spray or using off-label IV ketamine. And that's only growing, which I think is a really positive thing. There's over 25 states with some sort of regulation or legislation introduced to either, decriminalize or maybe open more of these regulated frameworks with mushrooms specifically, because that's just the most efficacious and really the safest, medicine that we have as far as full spectrum goes. And I think this industry, if you want to call it an industry, is only growing. I think we need to lead with more education, advocacy, and more of these webinars. Now what I'm really focused on is I have a day job. I'm the COO of a healthcare real estate company that we founded specifically to help ketamine clinics get lending or get money to expand. We're basically the landlords because Bank of America, Chase, they won't touch, even though it's FDA approved, the Schedule III facility using, or a psychiatrist's office using ketamine, because it's a Schedule III. So, and then we just opened, we're soft launched. We have 15 people in the center this week, but we soft launched our first service center in Oregon in December. We're the 13th in the United States legally able to serve people mushrooms, which is pretty cool. And now it's just a matter of I'm just really big on data, so getting with institutions and finding people that are want to do, want to be a part of like longitudinal studies of how this is affecting people and cost effectiveness. And one of our biggest goals is to get people to do this work in group, because community is a really big part of why this works, and how you can rely on other people. So it's Kelly, the name of it is Experience Onward. um and I can share a link. I think I shared my email if people want to get in touch after this. um and I will say, kind of end on this. We I haven't been sick for a very long time. I've definitely reversed signs and symptoms, and if I can do that with how badly I was, then I know that other concussion survivors can do it too. I think the biggest obstacle to doing that is getting ourselves kind of convinced that this will work. So if I could advocate for anything on this call, I'd advocate that everybody just reads more, listens to more webinars, downloads more podcasts, and just takes in more information, because whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're definitely right. It's an old silly saying, but as soon as you think that this can work for you and you're open to it, um, then I think that'll happen. Regardless of what modality you choose. So yeah, we're at 15, so I'll stop there.
Thanks, Daniel. And
Um,
yeah, Kyle put in a bit about his story in the chat, and someone in my breakout room was sharing their personal story as well. And my thought was like, I I think a lot of us feel called to share what we had to walk through. And my hope is that you really get to be a beacon of hope for people who are still in the middle of their process of trying to heal TBIs, and that you get to be the proof that it's
mhm.
possible. And yeah, so we're going to go into some question and answer time, and I've got one that I'll start with, and then everyone else feel free to raise your hands and or like put them in the chat, and we'll kind of go from there. And my curiosity is like, I think you listed a whole bunch of different things that you did, and I actually first met Dr. Dan in Denver, as well as Ronnie here, when working at this place Revive that was specifically working with
Oh, you
TBI
work there?
stuff for
Nice.
a little bit. Yeah. And so I got to see the kind of plethora of stuff, and I was helping out with the ketamine there, but then there's just all these other different things. So would you speak a little bit to what you felt like were like the most impactful pieces, and what you felt like your plant medicine experiences and psychedelic experiences helped with? And if you're open, would you also share what those initial medicines were for you? And yeah, like, I guess how you felt like they helped change your brain compared to, hyperbaric chamber and sweat lodges and like kind of all the other different things that you were doing.
Yeah. So at Revive, or at these kind of clinics that work with a wide variety of kind of neurological disorders, right? Like ALS and concussion, and I think now they're going into like long COVID and these sorts of things. When I was there, which usually, you fly either to Denver, or in this case, I was in Orlando, and you're at this, you stay in a hotel and you get treated like 3 times a day. And each time was, a lot of money out of pocket, but like when you're working on yourself, you feel good, right? Like you're at these clinics and you're doing eye exercises and you're stimulating the brain. You're maybe standing on a Bosu ball, clapping your hands, or you're in a gyro stim, which kind of turns you in a specific direction to reset your vestibular system, which is your earlobe fluid, where you feel you are in space, because people can get disoriented with getting hit in the head. Like it always felt good, but when I had to go home to kind of do the eye exercises, and it just always dropped off, the feeling. And nobody can be in a clinic for the rest of their life. And so I kind of understood, about 2 or 3 years in, that I was going to need something else. I could keep doing this for a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, and I was going to get maybe 10% of my brain back. You can meditate for 30 years and create new neurological pathways, but I wanted something faster. I really did, and I was searching for that. And then when I saw mushrooms, and the studies that were coming out, you know and then there's also been studies that have kind of come out recently that are challenging this kind of neuroplasticity. But like when I committed to thinking and knowing that this was going to work for me, it did. I think it's a potent anti-inflammatory, and it shows in the brain that it can do naturally what a lot of these kind of neurological clinics are trying to do, right? Which is, quite frankly, just wake up brain hemispheres, and wake up the brain. So, I, you know, I was really just searching for an answer. Luckily, there's this kind of revival going on. There's a lot of research that helps. It really helped me to read the research, regardless of who it was from, to then convince me that taking magic mushrooms can do this to the brain, and taking them in a high dose, in a very kind of controlled setting with a specific intention, was like completely new verbiage or a way of doing it. We always just used to do it, at keg parties and in the forest with our buddies in Canada, and you never really correlated the next day. You're like, oh, I'm really not that hungover, or you never correlated that back to like, well, it has to be because we took these mushrooms, and these mushrooms are neuroprotectant in a way. Um, so that was yeah, that was a really big deal for me. And my first week, to kind of answer your second question, my first week of healing, I did 5.6 grams of mushrooms. It was a PE6 strain, so it was a cross between, different strains of mushrooms do different things. So it was a cross between a Texas mushroom and a strain called penis envy, which they're all very weird names. And then a week later, I was still on this farm, and a friend had told me that he was coming down, and everybody kind of bailed on him. For a ceremony, he had this really nice house in Boulder as a former teammate, who just started kind of his own path of healing. And I said, well, I'll come sit with you, and so I did another ceremony 7 days later, with 7 grams of mushrooms, which I didn't really feel, because you do build up a tolerance. It's best to not stack these types of ceremonies anywhere between, you got to be at least 4 months apart. Something I've learned over the last 6 months. And then we also did some DMT at the end of it, which was pretty profound, and that's being studied through the FDA for um, stroke victims, just based off of what it can do for the brain in such a short amount of time. It's a 30-minute experience as opposed to 6 hours. Um, and in 2020, I did ayahuasca with the Hero Cards Project and a retreat in the middle of Peru. Um, so those are the three main ones I did. I've done DMT twice. I've done ayahuasca once. But mushrooms, pretty religiously for the first 3 years, every 3 months. Um, and then for the last 2.5, 3 years, once a year, sometimes twice a year. And I'm still have that kind of sustained effect. Don't feel the need to microdose anymore. Um, and can just use exercise, diet, meditation, breath work, to kind of, keep me happy and healthy and stay in the moment with, my kids and everything else.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing about all that. So it sounds like part of what you're saying is that the mushrooms were actually just doing the same thing that all of these exercises were trying to do, which is just wake up the brain. That is it's just fascinating.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, you can they saw it under fMRI, right? Like so with Imperial College of London, they've done numerous studies. I think it really helps that this can be studied through the FDA, because I think because of the stigma associated with it, I think that really helps people to say, okay, and we are in this society, right, where we listen to doctors. Like I listened to doctors too, I always thought that because they knew the psychopharmacology of the body and the medicine that they could treat us the best way. I came to find out that's not necessarily true, which is a scary thing to find out. And then I think a lot of this world now, there's a spiritual aspect that we haven't really kind of touched on. I really don't think that there's like there's no such thing as a coincidence in my life. I think that my life, the path that I've been on, I was given these challenges because I can, for whatever reason, handle them. And I was given an opportunity to play in the NHL. I definitely earned it. But there's so many things that have to go right. And there's so much luck involved, to have a 10-year career. And and then, I really do feel lucky that I didn't just kind of, well, first of all, that I didn't die afterwards. And because there were a lot of times when I was searching for these medicines that you cope with other mechanisms. And I can just see now so clearly that everything was just perfectly set up, for where I am today. And I've obviously got a close place in my heart for concussion survivors because it's such a dark world that you have to live in for so long. There's really good meaning. I don't want to come off at these clinics like people are really trying their best, you know what I mean? I just remember having this thought of like, okay, can you guys publish some of your data, like about the eye exercises, with the vestibular exercises, with the short-term, long-term memory exercises, the saccades you're giving me, and then this gyrostim? Can you publish? And a lot of them said, well, we've tried, but we just, because we're doing so many things, we it's hard to correlate what could be helping and isn't. And then when I saw these studies with the mushrooms, I'm like, well, this is just one thing. This is one thing that seems to be helping with a lot of neurological and psychiatric disorders. So let's try it, and I think that has to go to it also helping align the mind, body, and spirit. I think that so much of medicine, what's not talked about is how these experiences can give confidence to people that had so much self-doubt because of symptoms or maybe other circumstances. After these ceremonies, I just intuitively know exactly what I need to do in my life and who I need to have in my life. And I do them without any fear of repercussion or without any of the anxiety that comes along with making decisions. And it happens for a short amount of time, like for a couple months. Then the fear based thinking starts to creep in, but you can notice it right away. So There's an aspect to this where, like, you just have to, sometimes you got to get sick enough to just throw your arms up and be like, okay, I'm not in control. Um, but if this can help me, then I'm open to it. And I think that's an attitude that you have to try to bring um to some of these therapies, ketamine included.
Mm, thanks.
No problem.
I
We
want
had
to
some
jump into
really,
some.
yeah, we had some good
Oh, go for
questions
it.
in the chat. I was going to ask Eli if he wants to share one of his questions in real time.
Oh, sure. Well, I just had asked if you had any advice to somebody that was looking to disclose interest in this journey
Hmm.
with their family. Like, my mom is an open-minded lady, but to say to her, "I'd like to try mushrooms," as casually,
Yeah.
like I get advertised mushrooms a lot because I click on links for Mind Mend, which
Okay.
is they do like a microdose capsule
Mm-hmm.
that I was looking at recently. But I'm just trying to get some ammo in my belt for how to approach those conversations.
Yeah, so know your audience. And if she likes, like, would she listen to like a neuroscientist from
Yeah,
Stanford talking about? Okay.
absolutely.
So grab you can go on the website, it's in the chat. I posted two things. I posted Johns Hopkins, Roland Griffiths talking about it. He's one of the
Yeah.
leading researchers. And then Andrew Huberman talks about it in a very non salesman way, right? This is just like education. So if you show her those two videos and then see where it
Okay.
lies.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else I typed in here. Families. Oh, I just asked what you could, because you referred to a high dose of mushrooms. So I was just wondering what you consider to be a high dose of mushrooms in grams.
Ugh. I think that depends on the mushroom, right? The strain. Different strains contain different concentrations of psilocybin or
Right.
psilocin. So if it's from the magnolia family, it needs to be much less.
Okay.
But for the most part, I would say, like, um and then also taking into account, like, it matters how empty your stomach is, so how long you've eaten prior
Right.
to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Remember that. For me, like, anywhere from like 1.5 or 2 to like 3.5 is like a medium to moderate, and then a high dose is anywhere from, like,
5
4 to,
plus.
yeah,
Yeah. The
4,
most
even
I've ever
4.
done the most I've done in one sitting is 3.5.
Yeah, it's a lot. And yeah, but you're there's no way you're gonna, not heal from what you
Yeah.
need to see, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah, they've got a cool way of exasperating what's at the forefront of the mind, and that's
Yeah.
why some of my first journey was so hard, is just a suicidality kind of loop that I was stuck in. But it showed me that it was mostly my thinking, and then I made a deal with it. It was a very simple message to me. It said, okay, we can tell you're not having fun. If we get you better, will you then go and create programs to get other people better, instead of living in the past, blaming the NHL, blaming the things that happened to you, blaming a league that lied to you, even though these things are true. And I just said yes, and then here we are 6 years later. So, and
Right.
it seems to be like those very simple conversations and messages that happen to a lot of people in these ceremonies. Cool, buddy.
I would love
Good
to
luck.
throw to Tracy next. She had a really interesting question in the chat.
Oh, hi, Daniel.
Hey, Tracy.
I'm just loving this talk. Thank you so, so much for
Sure.
sharing your experience. And my question to you is, so those people closest to you, your wife, your friends, the people who've watched you through this journey, what did they reflect back to you that they have seen as you have so courageously sort of accepted the medicine's challenge to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think my wife is okay, with continuing to let me do this, because she sees that I'm better. and that, but I was just always, people would walk on eggshells, around me because I was just, like in my playing career, I was just very unpredictable. Like some days I could have 2 or 3 beers at a birthday party and be happy. And other days I would end up saying something that I regret, so one of my friends told me, um, like a new good friend, who committed to doing this work recently, and he said the reason I'm doing this is because when I talked to you at the soccer practices, like you were like looking right in my eyes, and you were just so present, and I was struck by that, and I wanted some of that, and I think that's what it gives you, right? It gives you, and I think that's what, I wouldn't say women in general, but like my wife definitely wants that. She wants to know I'm present when I'm
Mhm.
talking to her, and I want to be present with my kids because I wasn't for a very long time. And so if one thing that I know that I've seen that these mushrooms give people is they give you more presence and awareness, to stay in the moment. You feel things more deeply. So that's
Mhm.
kind of like a warning. So you feel happiness just as you would feel sadness more deeply.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I was numbed out for quite some time. Um, I think it's really important to like know yourself too. Like I'm an empath, and I've just always been that way.
Mhm.
Certain things affect me more. Um, one of my kids is like that, and my wife, and others don't necessarily know how to deal with it, but I do, and I try
Mhm.
to explain this to them. And so, knowing yourself, knowing when you need a little alone time and self-care.
Mhm.
I was on my own for such a long time that I love being alone. I just do. I'm very,
Mm.
so
And
I
do you
get a
think
little
do you
itchy
think that
when,
do you think
yeah, go
that's
ahead.
changed since you have had this kind of, as you described, a rebirth? Do you think that ability to be alone, enjoy that company has that changed somewhat since you had this experience?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I actually, I definitely go through periods of like wanting to be around people a lot more.
Mhm.
As I get closer to, you know, the ceremony, I want to share. I've been like writing a lot. Writing is very easy. Language is easily accessible. You feel more creative. You've got more energy.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that part of me has definitely changed. But I also like, I really do get a lot of energy out of, um kind of like thinking about how to explain this,
Mhm.
and thinking about how to get people to hear it, more
Mhm.
more people. That intrigues me, and then that needs to kind of, it needs to kind of be refined, and then it needs to be, then you need to speak about it, and then you need to kind of sit back and observe and see how people are reacting to it, and then tweak it from there.
Mhm. Well, this has been so impactful, and we're from Canada,
Oh,
and
cool.
so I can relate to some of your story. And I loved the nuance where you were talking about the difference between, the recreational experience we sometimes have in our youth versus this, more
Mm.
um, intentional. And I would maybe reference it as a bit more sacred experience also. So I just so appreciate you referencing both of those, the nuance, and thank you so much for your story.
Of course. Yeah, and I agree with you. It is I mean, we didn't really get into too much about like how, like what's actually happening. Am I like actually seeing and feeling um where I came from and then where I'm going to go? Is that helping me in some sort of way? So those bigger journeys are, uh it's some, you're communicating with some type of intelligence, um that isn't of this world, kind of put it that way. And I will say there's nothing wrong with doing mushrooms recreationally. At least I don't think. There's a lot of camps that, it is a sacred medicine. I understand that. But I don't demonize too many people about using it recreationally to kind of feel better, feel happier.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
One last question, and just maybe in the chat or if someone could place it, how we can support the work that you're doing and to just continue to cheer you on. And that's it for me.
oh, Thank you. Yeah, so I think a bunch of people have put the website. Let me see. I'll do Instagram. I'm on there a lot. And then I do these webinars pretty often. So, just people will find me if they need to. But yeah, definitely appreciate the support from everyone for sure.
Next, I'd love to send it to Nicholas Powers. Super interesting question about sports. Let him take it away.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Nick. I'm
Nick.
studying sports psychology and yeah, I guess like for me, I'd always wanted to be a sports psychologist, but given my like experiences with like psychedelics, I've also felt like called to psychedelic therapy. And I always thought those two were like totally like mutually like independent fields. But like hearing about your story, it excites me that there's heaps of potential to be able to like work with both as a psychologist. And I've even had an experience where I was like struggling with like post concussion like headaches for a little while and like having trouble like matching my like thoughts to words, and like after like 5 grams of mushrooms it was like an immediate like whoa, like this is like such a cool thing. But yeah, I guess my question was like, do you feel that professional athletes in general are open to psychedelic medicine, or do you think there are a lot of roadblocks in mainstream acceptance at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of men and women dabbling with the low dose for sure. I think that there's some that are kind of brave enough, or maybe that have suffered enough during the season or at a point in their career where it's just getting so heavy that they want something else. And they're participating. I think there's enough people now, like in specific communities, the NBA, the NFL, and then the NHL, where um, we're all the same in a sense, right? Where it's a very small kind of community, and um, I tend to try to take like Wayne Dyer's approach of, he says like, be who you are, try to be as confident as you can be and just dance your dance. And then some people are going to see it and they're going to be like, hey man, I want to learn those steps. Even though I might be doing okay, I know I can be doing better. And so that's like a lot of the message that I hear, even if you're not an athlete, right? It's like, well, I don't think I'm that sick, but this is kind of what's going on and can it help me? Um, and so, I do think there's a lot of parallel between, if you need to be, if you've been feeling, first of all, being an athlete is like extremely difficult. Like there's so much stress that you put on yourself and that, gets compounded. And so I think you can use this medicine in a very specific way to alleviate that, but then also kind of, reinvigorate yourself, take a little rest. When's the last time somebody's like taken 4 hours, sat on the couch, headphones, eye shades, really good music, and just kind of explored their own mind, see what comes up. It's a really good rest and reset for something like professional sports, especially hockey, where there's just so much travel, so much suffering, so much punishment you put your body through. So yeah, I think it's good for athletes. I think it could be really beneficial in extending careers, making people better within a career, or in transition too, where we see a lot of guys fail and struggle. Figuring out who you are away from the sport, I think, is something that's really important. And so transitioning into life after the game, this medicine can be a really important tool to kind of save yourself years of searching and struggling.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the things like I've just loved about yeah, like the program I'm doing, because I always just thought like, oh, there's so many like experiences that like athletes like experience, and like there'd be so much stuff that's like mutually exclusive to like performance enhancement and stuff like that. But I feel like it's all pretty like relatable to like any aspect of life where someone's like facing like a high pressure situation or just like constant like repetitive like stress on an ongoing basis. So yeah, it's been cool. But no, this is awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, buddy. Great question. And I talked a little bit before this call about like I don't want to call it marketing, but like how to explain this to people, like how do people get better and what's happening. And I think that the best way to explain it now is that we all kind of eventually, life is tough, like life is difficult, there's no way around it. It's beautiful too, it's beautiful, beautiful moments. But people suffer, people struggle, and I think there might be a little bit more of that now because their phones are just so accessible that we're on it every day, that there's just so much fear that inundates us. So it's hard to protect ourselves against it. But for the most part, I mean, it's part of being human, like being self-conscious and having self-doubt and questioning everything that I do, and being worried about what other people think, and being impatient and having expectations of other people or places or things, and when they don't meet them, then I'm upset or agitated. And then there's the flip side to that coin of being confident and connected and intuitive and patient and loving, and not letting anger or frustration cloud my judgment. And I've lived in both worlds. I've lived more so in the latter of the world, and when you can stay within that framework and that frame of mind, it's that old confirmation bias. The more grateful you are, the more you're practicing gratitude, and it's called a practice because you got to work it out like a muscle. And the more you do it, the more you see how grateful you are with your life, and the more these things just continue to kind of happen. People come into your life at the right moments, and we call those coincidences, but it's mostly because you're on the right path. And um so but these things, like, it's work. It's work, and the best way for me to stay within this kind of good mindset is I use exercise, and then I watch what I eat. But I will say to everyone on the call, like, I'm human, and I'm not perfect, far from it. And when I do fall off, because I do, I try to get back on the horse as quickly as possible, you know. So I think talking in human traits is a really good way to try to explain um how easily this medicine, how quickly it can improve your life. But you're responsible, you got to put in the work for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. A lot of nice reflections in the chat. I'm not sure if you got to read those, but I want to say, if anybody has any last reflections or anything they want to say to Daniel, just open it up, and I'll maybe just raise your hand or anything like that, and I'll toss to you. Otherwise, we can just wrap up.
Yeah, thanks so much, Daniel.
Of
And thank
course.
you everybody for coming today. Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to what we do at Thank You Life. We're a client assistance fund, so we give money to people who cannot afford this work. And this year we were actually able to help 111, which is a great number to land on. 111 people receive ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, kind
Do
of
you hear
all
that,
over
Tracy?
the US.
Did Tracy hear that?
I did. I was smiling ear to ear. I'm sorry I couldn't get on camera with you, but thank you for that.
Yeah, and so, yeah, just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Daniel, for taking the time to share your story. And yeah, if anybody's interested in the work that we do or the work that Daniel does, please feel free to follow up with all of us. And yeah, thanks again, Daniel. There's
One more
Sean
question.
here who, yeah, go for it, Sean.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on tonight and for hosting this. It's been really amazing.
Of course.
I was just kind of curious about like the first kind of bigger ceremony type dosage, and um, I guess maybe I'm asking maybe for a recommendation of um, I don't want to say how to do it, but I mean I've had experience with it before, and I find that being like outdoors and away from technology and just connected with nature in a lot of ways has been my favorite way. But also, I know you said that like kind of laying down maybe with an eye mask on and some good music might also be really amazing. I don't know. It's not really a great question, but I guess just
I hear you. There's a couple different ways to do it, so without eye shades on is a really good experience in nature. If whether it's like you're on a walk or you're laying in the grass under a tree, or you're by the beach, it can be really great. And then I would say the flip side, that's more of like kind of an outward experience where you're feeling kind of connected and uh then there's like this internal pathway that you can go on, where you take an intention, you put these eye shades on, you let this music guide you, and not necessarily the sounds of nature. There's some tunes that integrate that, but um and then you just watch, and it's if you're bringing an intention, it's a pretty profound way to experience it. No one way is right or wrong. I think they're just different, you know. Um, so um, and you just got to really, either way you do it, right? You got to make sure that you have somebody there that's experienced that can watch you, ground you,
mhm,
that isn't on, an amount that you're on, um, and uh, and then you just have to prepare, let this person know why you're doing it. Hopefully they know who you are. If they don't, just give them a little insight into how you tick, and um your past traumas, etc. Something that could come up, so
mhm.
yeah, of
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And
course.
um, could I ask one?
um yeah,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. And if you, ask another question, and just I'll put my email in the chat down here so you have it. And I've done a bunch of webinars before, and then people's testimonials from the retreats that we've done. It's about 37 people. So I'll send you a link to all of them, and you can watch them and then make your decision.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Cool.
Well, I'll hop off, but thank you so much again. And
Of course.
yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you.
And I will say, sorry, Meredith, I was just seeing this. Yeah, no problem, Christine. Thanks for coming. Ketamine has been shown to help tremendously with cognitive improvements, and those are through FDA approved studies. And so if that's what's available to you, and insurance can get reimbursed, it's a really good way to start as well. And the intranasal spray that's FDA approved, which gives you that insurance reimbursement across, I think there's around 2,100 clinics now, can still send you on a really nice journey inwardly, and in a kind of a more disassociative state, but still people have had some pretty profound learnings from that too. So, you know, I encourage people to definitely go and check that modality out for sure. And then Rebecca, I put my email there, Rebecca, and then it's the website. I'm gonna add a phone number this week because I think I've realized not too many people are, you know, emailing or so yeah, Ronald, that's cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks again, Daniel.
Yeah, of course, Kevin. Good stuff.
Any last words before we close for the evening? All right, so that is it, folks. Yeah, thanks again for joining us, and yeah, Daniel, we really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks
All
for having me,
right,
buddy.
Bye,
until
everyone.
next time, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Bye.